Metanoia is establishing quality housing and generating economic development in North Charleston. Today, I talk one-on-one with the Executive Director of Metanoia, Reverend Bill Stanfield, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Reverend Bill Stanfield, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Quintin. Hope you're doing well.
Yes, sir, absolutely. I know, obviously, you're the CEO of Metanoia, and obviously, you guys have done a lot of great things up in North Charleston. And obviously, Metanoia is about making a positive change in the lives of society, and obviously, where you all are today. What is the biggest change that you have made as an organization for the society in the past, say, 19 years?
Yeah, that's a great question, Quintin. You know, we do youth leadership development programming. We are a housing developer. We do economic development, sort of jobs training programming, and you know, we've partnered with others to get a new school built in the neighborhood and get a $4 million mitigation agreement from a local rail authority, and do lots of good things. I think, you know, we really think a lot at Metanoia about how whenever I get asked that question a lot, and honestly. In many ways, the biggest change that I sense in doing this work for 20 years actually has happened inside of me. It's you know, when you do this work, it can be the very thing that the frustrations of it and the challenges of it help you to grow as a person. That's not the answer you're probably looking for, but like I think we really try to make sure that everybody on our team is, you know, the word metanoia means sort of like a change of perspective, a change of direction, and that everybody's here open to growth, and that we believe sort of as we grow ourselves, we grow the community that we're located in. So we're happy to see, you know, first generation college students coming out of Metanoia. We're happy to see new homeowners and people being able to stabilize their livelihood because they have housing they can afford, or people getting a new job, or we've worked sort of partnering with a local black-owned bakery, Daddy's Girls Bakery, right now, and they're doing great. And so it's great to see sort of lots of success stories, but it's really also important, I think, that each of us, we can only grow what's outside of us to the degree we try to grow what's inside of us. And so the work that we've sort of done with one another and growing ourselves has been really helpful too. So,
how do you grow with smart growth?
That's a great question. I think it begins by understanding what your values are, Quintin. I think you have to know what is yours to do and what is not yours to do. There's a great sort of example. It's called the $1 million question. We sort of imagine that somebody comes to you as a nonprofit. They say, "I'd like to give you $1 million." Any nonprofit would probably like $1 million, right? But then they sort of lean over into your ear. They say, "But to give us $1 million, you have to give up something that you value." And then you can think about this as an individual too, you know. And then they say, you know, they whisper something in your ear, and you sort of push back, and you say, "You know what? $1 million would be really nice right now. Save a lot of problems that I got. You know, help me pay for things I'd like to pay for. But that thing you just whispered in my ear is too important to me." And I think it's really important to know what those things are for you as an organization, as a person. And you know, for us, it's trying to, whenever possible, sort of listen to the community, be rooted in the community, to seek, whenever possible, to do things with our neighbors and citizens here in the neighborhood rather than to them. And so, you know, and I think also not focusing on work within our community that really does make a substantive difference within the lives, for example, of young people, rather than just chasing after, you know, putting a whole lot of kids through a mill that we might be able to sort of show you a bunch of numbers, but not show you the change. We'd rather sort of work with 10 kids and have them authentically on a better journey in life than 100 kids and they sort of forget what they learned in 2 weeks' time. And so I think smart growth and sustainable growth is generally slow. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and you have to pace yourself. You know, if you do get a little bit of money, don't spend it all at once. You know, we're working on a big adaptive reuse project of a school that's going to cost probably $30 million at this point. And so, you know, we've saved some money towards that end, but we still have some more work to do. And so, just not being willing to sort of like plan as well, plan for the future, I think is really important also.
What is the direction that Metanoia is heading into right now with that perspective?
You know, we're actually going through a whole process right now internally called a theory of change process, where we're sort of asking ourselves what we believe about the world, what we want to be able to say about how we work together as a team. So we're taking this season during the pandemic. You know, we can't do quite as much as we might normally do out in the community. So we've taken this season to look inward, and we've updated all of our accounting systems, all of our human resources systems, updated our youth policies and programs, and sort of to build our internal capacity. You know, when you can't do as much out in the world, we take time to sort of build up what we can do inside. And but like longer term, I think, you know, the communities that we serve are really changing fast. As a result of gentrification, as a result of added investment from the sort of, you know, we sit right between kind of Park Circle, where property values have quintupled over the last few years, and downtown Charleston, where of course property values are rising. And there's two rivers on our east and west, and so we have a lot of people interested in property up here that didn't used to be, and sort of a lot of pressure. And so we're trying to stay ahead of that by acquiring property, working with partners like the Luxury Alliance Model Communities and others to build affordable housing, to make sure that people can stay in the neighborhood even as investment comes in. Charleston has a really bad track record, as you know, of gentrification, of sort of one community getting totally swept aside when investment comes into the neighborhood. And we want to kind of rewrite that script by creating opportunities for people to remain here. We don't know that you can sort of hold back that level of investment. The economic pressures are just so great, but can we create a scenario where it's much more fair for people within the community, and everybody kind of can benefit from it eventually. So that's one way that our work has changed. It used to be when we called about a property to buy, you know, to do an affordable home in the neighborhood, we were probably the first one to call about property in 15 years. And now I live in Shakur, and where we work, and I get a postcard almost once a week, or a call, somebody wanting to buy my house. And so we see the amount of development pressure. You don't see it sort of drive through the neighborhood yet, but you see the precursors of it. People sort of trying to buy out properties, flip them, you know, and so we see what's coming. So we're just trying to position the community so that we want to be able to say, as a result of the work we're doing now, you know, 10, 15 years from now, people say that neighborhood is different because of what Metanoia did back in 2021, 2022, and its partners. And so, yeah, I think that's that's the way our external work has changed, is dealing with those economic pressures that didn't used to be there. So.
With those economic pressures, Reverend Bill, let me ask you, what position is the community in right now?
Well, I think the community is in a position of, you know, it's a kind of a tenuous position. It's struggling through COVID, trying to figure out how to educate and take care of our young people in the midst of this very difficult season. There's a lot of economic pressure, and particularly for families who maybe don't own, you know, at least if a family owns their property, they can decide themselves whether they're going to sort of cash out, make money off of the change, or stay. But many people in Shakur don't own their own properties; they rent, and so it's a very tenuous time for folks, and folks are starting to feel that. But when you when you're dealing with all the other pressures of this season, you have to sort of prioritize making sure you take care of today's needs as opposed to worry about the other stuff. And so I think people are aware of it, but also just trying to make sure that they make ends meet right now for today as well.
What is the per capita income for the city of North Charleston?
That's a good question for the whole city of North Charleston. I know sort of for the neighborhoods we serve, it's pretty low. It's like down in the low 30s, I think, the sort of average median income, $30,000 range. Some folks making a little below that, some folks making above it. But I don't know what it is for the whole entire city. You know, we are the highest, the neighborhoods that we live and work in here at Metanoia have the highest concentrations of child poverty in South Carolina. So that's how we were identified. That's how sort of our work began in those neighborhoods, from some churches that want to do something about that. And so I imagine that data is still consistently the same in terms of, because it's really, you know, these communities that we work in are really the best chance to get it right in terms of creating a place for people that's kind of anywhere near downtown Charleston or the peninsula, anywhere close to jobs. If these neighborhoods sort of are no longer affordable, or when they become no longer affordable, people are going to be having to drive way out to Ladson and past that even to find places they can afford, and that makes life a lot harder because, you know, we're 15 minutes from anywhere where our communities are, and so it's easier to get to work. It's easier to sort of find out, do the things you need to do. But if you're living way out in the country, you're far from everything. It takes longer, more gas money, you know. So we're just trying to kind of do what we can to preserve the neighborhoods or make reinvestment much more fair as it comes through.
What is that reinvestment right now?
Did you say, I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. Did you say, what does it look like right now?
Oh yeah, the reinvestment. How is that right now?
Well, we see a lot of, as a result of the increased interest in the community, and as a result of our work kind of with property in the neighborhood and that kind of thing, we see a lot of speculation. So to drive through the neighborhood, you don't necessarily see a big change, but if you know kind of who's showing up in the community, who's buying stuff, there's a lot of property changing hands right now. And that's sort of a sign that gentrification is on its way. So there's a large group redeveloping the Naval Hospital and a bunch of properties on the base, and the new Charleston County building on the corner of Rivers and McMillan, and all this new development that is either maybe hasn't quite kicked off yet, but all the groundwork is being laid for it. All the money's being brought together. All the plans are being written up. And so when that kicks off, it'll be kind of like a very quick thing. I think it'll feel like people will say, "Wow, this happened overnight," but it doesn't happen overnight. Or at least you start to see if you're involved, you start to see new faces showing up, looking at buildings, interested in things, and so we definitely see that where we are, and so we're just trying to again make it, hopefully make it a little more fair if we can through our work.
And what is the public revenue from land value capture in your area?
I don't know when you say public revenue, if you mean the tax-based revenue, I don't know what that is. I know that, a lot of properties in our community right now are rental properties, which actually earn more tax revenue than a home ownership property. It's a higher rate for, property investors than there are homeowners. But I don't have that data exactly from the county or the city, what the public revenue is for these neighborhoods. Interesting to know.
And have your organization, or at least the city of North Charleston, considered establishing I hate to ask this, a delinquent tax revolving fund?
I don't know quite what that is. I know some cities have, and I can't sort of speak on behalf of the city of North Charleston. I'm not a city of North Charleston official and work for the city, but some cities do have funds for where properties, if they're not well cared for, or let's say they're abandoned, the property owner is not doing anything with them or paying their taxes, then they will seize the property. You can do a foreclosure on the property, and then offer opportunities for other groups to develop that property as affordable housing. We'd be in support of that. I'm not sure that the city of North Charleston has really sort of gotten into that or looked at how. I really don't know how carefully they've looked at such a policy, but there are some cities that do that kind of thing. They're called land banks usually. Yeah.
I remember you talking a little bit about that in my last interview with you right here. But let me ask you, what are the market conditions right now in Shakur, Cherokee?
Well, housing prices are rising. Housing prices in vacant land is rising. I mean, we've been doing this since 2002, so we have a 20-year window basically to look at here. And I can remember when we could buy a vacant lot for a home for $25,000 or $2,500, and now it's grown to probably $25,000 for a vacant lot in the neighborhood. And that's still kind of for Charleston not that expensive, but it's going up. It's going up every month. It's not just sort of every year. It's going up. It's going up every month. And so, so again, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of people interested in buying property, and when you have that many people, it just the demand, supply and demand, basic economics, right? So when you have a lot of demand on the property, the price begins to rise, and that's concerning for people that maybe have been here for a long time or don't own their own properties. That maybe somebody might come along and offer the owner of that property a better deal, and they just sell out from underneath them, and then they might get moved on. And we're sort of trying to do what we can to prevent those kinds of scenarios.
How do you do vacant property inventorying?
Yeah, well, we have some partners that have worked with us, the State Ports Authority, the Local Alliance of Small Communities, a couple local companies, Ingevity, National Fair Housing Alliance, have sort of helped us with some funds that we can use to just be doing what for-profit developers do, which is they speculate. They go out and they buy property, and then they hold it, and they put together money to renovate it. And so we've raised some money to be able to do that. and we have been doing that with our partners. And then, we also have expertise in getting grant money from the state of South Carolina. Ultimately, it all comes from the federal government, but it flows through the state of South Carolina or Charleston County or Charleston, and we sort of wed that money with conventional money from a bank and build affordable properties. So we have about 23 units over the next 18 months, some home ownership, some rental, that we'll be building in Shakur, Cherokee, and Liberty Hill for the most part at this point. We just finished 2 in Acabee here in North Charleston, home ownership units on Michigan Street. And so that's one side of our work, even though it's COVID, hasn't slowed us down really.
And when it comes to obviously vacant and tax delinquent properties, what are your focus zones?
We're mostly, Metanoia works really exclusively on that kind of work on the southern half of North Charleston. So, all the property we acquire is for affordable housing. We don't acquire any property that's not going to be for affordable housing. And so we're focused primarily in the 3 southernmost neighborhoods of North Charleston: Union Heights, Acabee, and Shakur, Cherokee. We've done more in Shakur because we sort of started in Shakur, but we do, if we find a lot in a neighborhood, Dorchester Terrace or Dorchester Wayland, we may look at those possibilities as well. Liberty Hill, maybe. We have a project right now in partnership with the family in Liberty Hill, the LeCute family. They're going to keep ownership of a property. We're building some apartments on that property. They'll collect a little bit of revenue every year for their family, and we'll manage it for them. And it was a great partnership because they wanted to see the neighborhood have more affordable housing. They had the land, but they wanted to keep the land in their family. So we said, well, all right, let's leave it in your family, and we'll just sort of rent the ground from you, if you will, for a period of time. So it's been a good partnership.
And what data-driven mapping process are you using to identify and visualize those focus zones for acquisition and deposition?
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, when it was still, I guess it was the summer of 2019, so when you could still do this kind of thing, we actually had a few interns work with some of our partners at the local council of governments and the neighborhoods and do like a block by block mapping. Like they actually walked the streets and they actually mapped where we had vacant properties, where we had abandoned parcels or abandoned houses that were up, but they were abandoned. And so we do have all that mapped in the neighborhood, and we have data around it. So we can sort of present that to funders and say, this is where the opportunities are. And but just knowing where a vacant property is just sort of one step in the right direction. You have to get in touch with the person who actually owns it now, get them interested in selling it, those kinds of things. And so that's the kind of work we're working on now as well.
What is that new construction trend in that area?
People are, what sort of development 101 for a lot of these for-profit developers is to buy something cheap and then put something on it, renovate it, and sell it higher. And so I think that's what you see a lot of. You don't see a ton of the actual construction going on yet. It's just the beginning phase, people interested in speculating on property and then buying it up. And then, but I do think you'll start to see more and more construction here. We try to do, we try to make our construction more sort of green, environmentally sensitive, put in appliances for their Energy Star appliances, those kinds of things, try to make it more affordable to families long term when they move in that house. So,
and how do you identify, acquire, market, and convey those individual development opportunities around those areas?
Well, you have to sort of go about understanding where the opportunities are. So that's where the surveys come in. You have to get in touch with the owners of properties. They have to agree to sell, and then you hold that property. We sort of hold that property until we can get grant funds, which we know how to get, but it takes some time. It takes 6 months to a year to sort of go off, write the application, answer the questions, get the funding set up. And then you can start construction, and you sort of layer. You get a bank loan. Let's say a house costs $100,000 to build, which it doesn't anymore. Costs more than that, just to be easy numbers. $100,000 to build, and we might get a grant for $30,000, and then we get a bank loan for the other $70,000. And then when we either rent that property or sell it to the homeowner, we try to pass the value of those grant money onto that other user, whoever that person is. If it's a homeowner, then they don't have to qualify for the full $100,000 mortgage. They might just qualify for a $70,000 mortgage and be able to make it more affordable for them and their families. Or if it's a renter, they pay less in rent every month. And so that's kind of how it works for us. But that's, and for a conventional developer, they just sort of do the same thing, but they don't bring in the grant money. They just try to make as much money as they can. That's not what we're in business to do. We're in business to work to preserve the neighborhood and create a space for hardworking families to stay close to where they work and not be pushed aside.
Where in that area do you expand housing choice?
Wherever we can. Wherever we can find, good partners or opportunities of property, we'll look to expand those housing choices and create opportunities for people to live and to remain here at a price they can afford. So.
And how is your organization assisting in providing land for viable market rate investment, especially development, incorporated as an affordable housing component?
Well, we don't provide, the market will take care of itself. So we don't need to do anything to further spur the market. It's already getting hot enough. The market is, people are buying up properties. What the market does, though, is the market left to its own devices, it tries to buy low and sell high. So it results in gentrification. What we want to be is sort of an agent within the market that is doing something different with a different set of motivations, where we act as a developer. We build houses just like anybody else, but we're doing what we need to do to keep those houses affordable so that eventually you have a much more mixed income community, which really can be a successful community for everybody involved if you can sort of create that can be better for all involved. Makes the schools better, makes a lot of things improve. And so we just sort of are focused on making sure that people who might otherwise be swept aside are still included in the community.
And where are those strong, weak housing submarkets in that area?
So we have a mix of housing in our community. Some of it's single-family detached housing. We have a lot of vacant land in our neighborhoods as well, just vacant lots. So there's opportunities there, but we also have some multifamily, sort of smaller multifamily stuff. The neighborhoods in North Charleston were built right around World War II, right outside the former Navy base, to sort of service the war boom before there was any zoning. So you might have a house sitting next to an apartment, smaller apartment complex sitting next to another house, and so there's a lot of diverse housing options in our community, and we think that's a strength, actually, not a liability. And so the key is, how do you make sure to get as many of those possible kind of online and working in a way that serves the current residents of the neighborhood in a way that's healthy. And then, when Metanoia owns a house and we rent it, we take the revenue we might make off that house and we pump it back into as a nonprofit. We're not sort of going off and spending it somewhere else. We're pumping it back into the neighborhood to create new opportunities, either for housing or for our youth programs. We haven't talked much about our youth programs. We do a lot of youth work in the community, as well as economic development jobs programs.
Well, let me jump right into it. How are you strengthening your programs to address racial inequities in, say, home ownership?
Well, I think of all the homeowners that we have sold homes to, I think only one has not been a black family. You're not legally allowed to discriminate by race one way or the other, but we try to make sure that we market our properties within the community and make sure that sort of black and brown folks are well aware and have opportunities to educate themselves and be in a position to buy homes through our programs and work with partners that help provide education, like Origin and the Urban League, other folks. And so, that's really part of our goal. Unfortunately, race and class are very tied together in Charleston, South Carolina, right? So unfortunately, a predominantly black community is probably also going to be a predominantly lower wealth community as well. And that ought not be so, but that's how it is in Charleston, at least. And so the options that we offer based on incomes of folks generally are options that are better for black and brown families. or they offer, that's most of the folks that take advantage of our housing opportunities are those families. And so, we feel like by proactively seeking to acquire and develop property within the neighborhood and keep that property affordable for families that are here, these have been, at least Shakur Cherokee for the last 40 years probably has been a largely African American neighborhood. It wasn't that it was a segregated neighborhood actually when it was first built. You couldn't black folks couldn't live in Shakur when they were first built. When it was first built, I've seen old deeds of houses in our neighborhood that says it should not be rented, sold, or disposed of to persons of African descent. And then at some point there was sort of white flight, and people started moving out of the suburbs. People that were here, and the desegregation, and so then the neighborhood became, rather than being like kind of a white working class neighborhood of homeowners, it became primarily a low wealth renter neighborhood of black and brown folks. And so we're trying to make sure that we continue to create opportunities for those folks, because we know Charleston doesn't necessarily have a good record of preserving communities on behalf of those folks. And if folks get shoved aside out of this neighborhood like they once did off the peninsula, there's not really anywhere for them to go that's close by, that's sort of, unless they have to move way out of town. So,
how do you educate the youth about this?
Well, we do have youth programming, at Metanoia. So our young people do participate in financial literacy. You start with sort of personal habits and helping them understand a need versus a want, and how to be banked, and the advantage, what's the differences between spending and investing. When you buy a TV, you're spending. When you buy a house, you're investing. You buy a car, you're spending. You pay for your education, you're investing. Right. And so we teach these concepts to students so that hopefully they can become more and more ready. And we provide housing to a number of families that participate in our youth programs, that maybe they've come to us through our youth programs and they find out, Metanoia is also a housing developer, and they might rent a home or buy a home through us. And so, the outcomes for young people, we know for a family when their housing options stabilize are much better than when they're moving around a lot. And so we see our housing work. We began principally as an effort to help young people, and we see our housing work as very much not a departure from that effort to help young people, but as very much part of that effort to help young people. We could offer the best after-school care in the world, and if a young person's going home to in fact, that's how we got into housing, is we had kids in our after-school programs that were going to really bad houses, and we said, well, we got to do something about that. The same is true that we could offer the best after-school care in the world, but if investors come through and shove everybody out of the neighborhood, the very kids we've been offering this after-school care can't stay, and so they're not able to take advantage of what we're able to do educationally. So, trying to offer really great youth programming, but put it beside opportunities for families to stay and remain in the community is important to us. So,
how do you monitor where buyers are coming from and their readiness?
That's a great question. We work with banks. In our scenarios, to buy a home, a home buyer has to get approved for a mortgage. They don't have to get approved for as much as they would if they weren't getting our help, but they do have to still get approved for a mortgage, and that gives us some confidence. That's why, even if you buy a house through Metanoia, folks would need to get some things straightened out in their credit oftentimes, make sure they have a decent, steady income and know how to keep a budget. And so we're not sort of giving housing away. You still have to afford it. And so we do try to make sure homeowners attend classes to learn about buying a home and learn about that process. Make sure we orient them to what it is to own their own home once they get in there, and try to help them out in that way. And so we try to sort of walk alongside the homeowners before they get in the house, make sure they can really afford it, make sure it's not more than their utilities and their rent or their mortgage payment are not adding up to be more than about 33% of their monthly income, and so they don't get stuck. When you own a home, something breaks, you got to fix it, that kind of thing. And so we don't want them to get stuck. We want to make sure that they have enough money to spend on their kids, to get opportunities for them, and fix things when they break and that kind of thing. So making sure we don't put them in a bad situation is important too.
And how many households in that area are paying 30% or more on housing costs?
Oh, that's a lot. So a cost burden house is doing that, and I believe it's around 60%. And for in Charleston County, it's not sort of in this, it's more broadly, but there's some data from the Chamber of Commerce. I don't have it right in front of me, so I could be slightly off on that, but I believe it's of lower income families in Charleston County, which Charleston County is about 33%, about 30-ish% of the county is lower income families. Of those families, 60% or so are cost burdened on their housing. That is, they're spending too much for their housing, which means they can't spend on other essential things that they need to help their families progress. Mm. And so, they're having to make some hard decisions between their rent payment and medicine, maybe, or a rent payment, and make sure the young people have a place to be during the summertime. If it costs a little money to have that happen, these kinds of things. And so, it has a lot of ramifications to have people cost burdened on their housing. It limits their opportunities to grow their own capacity for their families.
Reverend Bill, I was thinking about this last night as I was doing my research for this particular interview. But let me ask you, and this might be just a simplistic question here, but how much funding is left for affordable housing around the country?
Well, the good news is that we as a country it's not as much as I would like, but we do appropriate new money every year for affordable housing across the country. And so it's not as if there's one big pot and it's getting spent, and once it's gone, it's gone. Now, property costs are rising, so a dollar doesn't stretch as far as it used to, and so it costs more to do one unit of affordable housing than it used to 15 years ago. And I'm hopeful that there is some housing money in the infrastructure bill that's already passed, or sort of has passed the Senate and is waiting in Congress for the other bill. And there's some money in this new bill that's being talked about in Congress right now for affordable housing as well. So I'm hopeful that we may see a season here where new opportunities come forward. And Metanoia has partnered with some others, Chamber of Commerce and the Charleston Area Justice Ministry and other groups, to advocate for many places that are of our size and facing our pressures as Charleston. They have approved local funding options for affordable housing. So it's not just the federal dollars. Charleston County now gets federal money that we use for affordable housing, but there's no local money. If you have local money, you could put that with the federal money and do that much more. And it would also create jobs, in the construction industry, create better options for folks. And so I feel like we also need some of that locally, not just the federal money, and that's something we're working on with some of our partners as well.
What is that property inventory projection for, now 2021 and 2022?
Well, for us, we have 2 or 3 properties now under contract, continually looking to acquire new properties to keep those properties long-term affordable. Like I said, we're building over the next 18 months about 23 units of affordable housing, we hope to continue to acquire 5-10 properties a year to sort of keep this cycle going as long as we can. There may be one day, like downtown, it'd be very hard to do this on the peninsula, where a small vacant lot, is so expensive. It might be $200,000 itself before you put a house on it, and you just can't do that affordable housing, because by the time you buy the house or the lot, you put a shed on it, and it's still not going to be affordable. And so while we can, we still want to be able to buy property in our community and preserve it for affordable and workforce housing for the neighborhood.
What percentage of the community development block grant funds have you received over the past 4 years?
I don't know the answer to that question. We haven't. There are 2 funding sources in the county that are federal dollars that come to nonprofits. One is community development block grant funds. The other is called home funds. I don't know the percentage of the overall pot. Most of those monies, the vast majority of those monies, go into county and city sponsored infrastructure projects. They don't come to nonprofits at all. But we have gotten grants to support emergency repair programs to help people repair. We also do that. We would help people repair their own homes if they own their home and they can't afford to fix it up. We do that work as well, and that's where we've used our CDBG money. It's used it, and also to support our youth entrepreneurship centers. We help teach young people entrepreneurship skills, so we've used some community and block grant money for that. But it's a pretty low percentage of the overall amount of money the county gets that we get. I would guess it'd be less than 2 or 3% at this point.
And how many of the homes have Metanoia been able to both purchase under your organization's name?
Well, yeah. So under Metanoia's name, you mean, right? Because Metanoia is the organization I work for. So, I mean, we have since 2016 or so, we've purchased a little over 40 pieces of property. Some of those are also being developed by other partners. There's a couple being done by the Community Land Trust here in North Charleston. We're partnered with them. We sort of have agreed to, when they're ready, to deed property to them so they can redevelop it. And so a few of those are being developed by them. We're doing some other ones as well. I mentioned the houses we're doing, but we're steadily growing we're steadily buying additional properties as well. So.
And I didn't mean to see under your name because I'm like, there's no way you can purchase that by yourself.
Right? No, I don't own any of those things. If I go away, Metanoia still owns it. I don't make any more money myself.
Right?
That's great. So.
Yes, sir. But let me ask you this: obviously, Metanoia is not a change for the sake of change, but positive change with deeper understanding of the implications. What are those implications right now?
I think the implications are, what kind of country do we want to be, Quintin? Do we want to be a country that's can we be a country where people are judged by the content of their character, or a country where people's zip code doesn't determine their future? Where a kid growing up in the neighborhood here where I live in Cherokee has every bit as much opportunity as a student growing up in another neighborhood. And where if you're willing to work hard and play by the rules, this can still be a good country for you. And I think there's a lot of people right now that feel like they are working hard and playing by the rules, and and the deck is so stacked against them that they say, well, why? I don't feel like this is fair. And I think those are, that's sort of what we want to be, is kind of a demonstration plot of what might be possible. We're not trying to, we don't have enough money or capacity to save everything or do everything, but we want to be a sort of a demonstration plot of what's possible and create opportunities for people that are, when they're motivated and want an opportunity, they can find it in partnership with us to sort of build the community from the inside out, so that solutions come from the neighborhood, and folks, we sort of invest in folks to grow their ability to bring positive change themselves.
And you said on the website, we believe that neighborhood residents are the true experts in their communities.
Yes,
then
right.
What is Metanoia true experts of?
Well, many of our, I have a board of directors that are my supervisors, and many of those folks are residents of the neighborhoods that we serve. It's sort of a different kind of board of directors. Most boards of directors are formed to kind of well-heeled or well-connected people, but they don't know what life is really like in the neighborhood here. So that's kind of how we try to tune ourselves, and by many of our staff, myself included, live in the community as well. And that's how we try to tune ourselves to what is important in the community. And can you repeat the first part of that question again? Because there was a word you used that I want to make sure I touch on.
Yes, sir. What exactly are you guys true experts of now that you've been in the area for like 20 years?
Yes, right, got it. I think that what we do for 20 years and do it something long enough, I don't know if I want to claim us as experts, but we've made some progress in those things. Youth leadership, working with young people, being housing developers. But more than that, I think slowing down enough and trying to really attend to being in relationship with the neighborhood in a way that is authentic, in a way that people, it's one of the best things I feel is when somebody from the community where we work, and it does happen with some frequency, refers to Metanoia not as them, but as us. We're all a part of this. We're all working together to make the community stronger. And I think that's where, the things that sort of make us different is the holistic nature of what we do. We don't just work in housing. We don't just work in youth. We don't just work in economic development. We believe that communities are sort of whole ecosystems. And you have to take the ecosystem seriously if you want to you can't just sort of promote a change right here and not look at all the rest of it. And so I think that's something we do that's important. And, the overall strategy that we do is called asset-based community development. It's about finding what has the rather than looking at the neighborhood for all of its problems, going and saying, what has the potential to work here? And investing in those things to sort of bring positive change for the neighborhood. And so we do that in young people's lives because we think young people are some of the greatest assets of the neighborhood. We also do it in physical properties. You know, we're working on housing development. We're still working on the adaptive reuse of the old Shakur Elementary School. We own that building now. We're working through an insurance claim to renovate that school for some great opportunities for the neighborhood. And so we see that, you know, a lot of our work is a matter of kind of the glasses you put on to look at the neighborhood, the people in the community, and sort of seeing the community and its people as glass half full rather than glass half empty.
And what right now, Reverend Bill, is your current partnership with Fresh Future Farm?
We don't really have a partnership right now with Fresh Future Farm. There was, you know, we were working with them at some point so that they could buy their property, but we actually, so that we couldn't resolve that issue because we didn't yet own the school. We've now subdivided their property from the school property. We own the school, and the farm, I believe, is pursuing some form of agreement with the city. I'm not sure where that stands, and we're not a party to it anymore.
What's next for Shakur Cherokee?
Well, new things are growing. You know, we are continuing to invest in our efforts at quality, affordable housing, generating economic development. We have several businesses on Reynolds Avenue that we're incubating. We just had 2 entrepreneurs located on Reynolds Avenue in a building we own. We're really pleased that a great partner, Daddy's Girls Bakery on Reynolds Avenue, that's a spot that we've helped them create there. And so, you know, we're going to sort of continue doing what we do, which is to try to invest in the community and grow the capacity of local residents and neighborhood as a whole, so that, like we said, years from now, maybe somebody will come through the neighborhood and say, this neighborhood is kind of different, and maybe it'd be in part because of the work that we've tried to do. And so we'll sort of stay at it and stay in the process of listening to the neighborhood, trying to be responsive to it, and staying in relationship to it.
And what else are you listening now when it comes to the residents?
You mean, what else are we sort of hearing from residents?
Yes, sir.
I think folks are, you know, COVID is at the top of all of our minds, trying to figure out how this thing, you know, where this thing is going to go, how much longer is it going to last, how many more things do we need to change, how long do we have to keep them changed. And it's gotten a lot harder to support folks. I think folks need more and more. They need, in this season, you know, what Metanoia oftentimes is focused on is capacity building, as opposed to, like, we make a differentiation between crisis poverty, which is like where you have a fire or hurricane, where you lose your job, and chronic poverty, which is where you've been sort of stuck in a situation from one generation to the next, you can't get out of it. The kind of work we do is probably better focused on helping folks get moved out of chronic poverty, but we have a lot of crisis poverty right now in our country as a result of COVID, right? And so we don't tend to give things away, but we've been trying to support those who do provide a box of food or help with rent and those kinds of things in this season as well. And that's really important work. And we've seen it for sure. And so we're just trying to, you know, do the best we can in this season. And I think what people are concerned about is just, I think it's very much the uncertainty of these days and trying to figure out, you know, there's pressures from gentrification, there's concerns around COVID, and all of that leads to a lot of uncertainty. And that people carry that in terms of stress and trauma in their bodies, you know, and so trying to do what we can to be an agent of healing in that, I think, is important.
Reverend Bill Stanfield, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's great to be here. It's good to see you again, Quintin.
Likewise.
Thanks for what you do for our region and the influence you have.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it greatly.